Women podcast. For your career and your life, no matter what business you're in.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the new We Power On season of the Northern Power Women podcast. I'm your host, Simone Roche, and on Monday, the 21st of March, we hosted the Northern Power Women Awards 2022, where we were joined by over 1,000 role models in the room and over 500 online to spotlight the fantastic work going on in and from the Northern Power Women community. We really do take pride in the fact that our awards are not just about one night, and that the legacy and the storytelling of these role models lasts well past the end of the awards event itself. And that's why this is the We Power On season. That's what it's all about. Over the next few episodes, we'll be powering on with the legacy of the Northern Power Women Awards, inspiring you with stories about how we're cracking on and keeping you updated on the latest from the Power Collective. And on today's episode, I'm joined by none other than Ann Cairns, Executive Vice Chair of Mastercard. In her role, Ann represents Mastercard around the world, focusing on inclusion, diversity and innovation. Ann has also held senior positions within many global organisations, including a tenure as CEO of transaction banking at ABN AMRO, 15 years in senior operational positions at Citigroup, and chair of ICE Clear Europe. Ann's currently the global chair of the 30% Club, the wonderful 30% Club, massive big fan, and the chair of the Financial Alliance for Women. In addition, she's also the lead non-exec board member of the government's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, or BEIS, as well as having a seat at the board of Lightrock, a global private equity platform investing in sustainable business. And this year has just joined the Northern Power Women Power List 2022. That is quite an introduction there, Ann. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Simone. It's absolutely fantastic to talk to you again. And congratulations on such a fabulous Power List dinner this year.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was, they're just saying it just before we started recording, just felt like there was almost at this moment in time, a moment in time where people sort of came together to have this conversation, to be part of this movement. And, you know, after the last couple of years being sort of challenging in many ways, but equally bringing people together who've met from the waist up into a room. So I think the magic of that, I think, is brilliant. And I think you're the executive vice chair for Mastercard, you know, a global recognized brand, an organization that is known across the entire world. But that's a big pressure, isn't it? Representing such a huge global brand. How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, I actually love it. I absolutely love the brand. I've been here over 11 years now. And the thing that I love about it is that it reaches something like 3 billion people around the world, connects them to the financial system, makes it easy for them to live their lives. In some ways, it kind of operates seamlessly in the background and does up to about 1 billion transactions a day. So it's a very exciting industry to be part of and a lovely firm. I simply love the people here.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, actually, when we launched Northern Power Women all those years ago, we had one of your predecessor who was part of that launch event, Marion King, way back many years ago. So I think, it's great that we've been able to get Mastercard back into the conversation and this, as I say, this global brand that you have. And you are clearly using the power and influence that your position brings. I mentioned the 30% Club. You are currently the global chair and the chair of the Financial Alliance for Women. Tell us about the purpose of these organisations for those who don't know and how they align with your personal values.
Look, two very different organisations. I'll start with Financial Alliance because that is actually a peer-to-peer network of banks, insurance companies, networks like Mastercard around the world that actually get together to talk about and to create products for the women's market, because you know that all over the world, women aren't served the same way by the financial industry as men. You know, fewer women have bank accounts, fewer women have loans, women have less insurance, less pensions. Women who are entrepreneurs get less investment. And really, that's what this organization set up to do, to actually start creating products for women to grab that fabulous she economy out there. And there's some big banks involved, for example, NatWest in the the UK is a fantastic member. So that's the kind of thing that Financial Alliance for Women does. And it's all over the world. Now, 30% Club was actually started in the UK at a time that we had less than 12% women on boards. It was roughly about 11 to 12 years ago, with the idea of if you get more than 30% of any minority in any position, they cease to be a minority. So that's what the 30% was about. And actually, it was instead of going for mandates of number of women on boards, we went out and we talked to the chairman and the CEOs of the big companies, the FTSE companies in Britain, and said, don't you want to change things? Don't you want a more diverse team? Wouldn't you like a bit more gender balance at the top of your businesses? And quite a few of them said, yes, we do. So we said, okay, will you sign up to this 30%? And the rest is history, actually, because not only has it worked in Britain, in actual fact, in the FTSE 100, we're getting near 40%. But now we're in the US, Japan, Australia, Hong Kong, all over the world again. And it's fabulous.
I've loved it. I think the 30% Club is something I've seen, sort of from its inception, and Dame Helena Morrissey and capturing. I think one of the things that we've always been really passionate about is capturing the advocacy, the male advocates. You need that support. We need that. Why is that? That has been the heart, hasn't it, as well, of the 30% Club, that male advocacy.
Oh, it's massive in the 30% Club. And the reason is because, unfortunately, the people who are at the top are predominantly men, or at least it was on boards. It's still very much true of CEOs and chairs. Men still dominate. But having those men as allies and saying they want to change the world, that's what makes the difference. And I think the other thing about advocacy is the 30% Club in Britain in 2020 started saying, look, it's, we're cracking it for women, but we still haven't cracked it for minorities in the sense of different ethnicities. So we put racial targets in there of we'd like at least one person of colour on every big British board. And because we're the 30% Club, we got a bit of a gender lens, and we said we'd love 50% of those seats to go to women of colour. And that is happening. I mean, they're up at, high 40s now. So it's an exciting time where we're really seeing change.
And I think that's what I most admire. It's that it's easy to say, right, we got there, 30%. You've already said you're almost at 40% in certain. I love that impatience. I love the impatience and not, it's easy to settle, isn't it? And go, oh, we're here. But I love that constant innovation. You're at a very senior level in what is quite a male-dominated profession. What else would you like to see happen? You've talked about the ethnicity targets and, how can we shift more women into positions like yours in finance from this year onwards?
Well, you're quite right, by the way. It is still quite a male-dominated industry. And while we're actually addressing the board level properly, we haven't really got the top of companies really balanced yet. I mean, we're still down at only 22% women in excos in Britain. And the problem is that the young women are not coming through the pipeline the way we want them to. And there's a lot of research being done here to say that actually they're dropping out at that first layer of management. That's where we see men accelerating and women holding or decelerating, leaving the industry and so on. And it's not just because all of us are going off to have children. I mean, some of us are, but that shouldn't be the thing that's causing this to happen either. So we're looking at that and saying, how can we really help women at that level? And really, it's all about sponsorship, mentorship, setting your succession plans properly, and making sure that you put those young women into those P&L jobs. Give them the businesses to run. Don't be funneling them into HR or legal or these support functions. Not that those are bad things to do. I mean, some of my very best friends are HR heads and lawyers. But if you want to actually run companies, you have to have that business experience earlier in life.
It's been intentional, isn't it? I think, we've talked, for the last number of years, about that seats at the table. You've talked about sponsorship, but it is that intention, isn't it? Don't just come here, but actually I'm with you. I'm alongside you, sort of. So, and everyone's different, aren't they? We all need different things or require different things. So I think it's being being personal to those to that pipeline coming through as well, isn't it? There's no one size fits all, is there?
Completely. And, that's so true when you move into areas such as ethnicity, disability. Everybody's an individual. It can be really hard, for example, for Black women in Britain to climb up the corporate ladder. Mastercard did a study with London School of Economics about all the barriers facing, and I actually used Black instead of women of color, because it's very different if you're Indian versus if you're from the Caribbean or of African descent. And often, it's invisible to people who don't have those backgrounds. We don't perceive the biases because we actually probably biased ourselves. And by the way, we're not subjected to the same sort of treatment. I actually said from the 30% Club perspective, sometimes it was easier at the beginning where we were just focusing on women because the guys at the top, had wives and daughters and sisters and so on that looked like the women they were bringing on the boards. Once you start introducing other aspects such as ethnicity, that's not true anymore. And so it becomes harder, and you have to really pay attention to how you eliminate bias.
And sometimes that's what they say, it's hard, but then actually we just have to try harder and do more, don't we? I think. So let's talk about Northernness. I always love the Northern superpower, and a lot of people think of the city, the people in finance in the city who are generally from the London or the South. Have you ever dialed down your Northernness or your northern attitude at work at all?
Not at all. I actually love being Northern. In fact, I brag about it. And the thing is, because I feel that being Northern is about being upfront, honest, outwardly friendly. Do you know how it is when you go and you try something on in Liverpool 1? It's the same in Newcastle. You come out of a changing room in a shop and half a dozen people who've never met you before in their lives look you up and down and say, "Are you? Well, you look nice in that, pet." Things like that. I love that. I hate it when you're sitting on a tube and everybody's looking at the floor and trying to ignore you. Probably got a lot worse with masks, quite honestly. But I think that it's lovely being Northern. I feel part of a big family.
Well, and you know what? We did a piece of research very early on back in 2017, and we interviewed 38 female execs and the rest male leaders. And, there was a real something in that Northern, that identity of being Northern, and almost seeing that as that real, actually, what can I do to showcase that and celebrate that? And I think that definitely came together last week in the awards, or 2 weeks ago in the awards. And I know we talked about mentoring and sponsorship, and we had a good old chat, didn't we, after the London Eye session for the WOW event. Yeah, it was the Day of the Girl, wasn't it? International Day of the Girl. And it was a buzzy room, wasn't it? It was so lively. And, what part of mentors had to play for you through your career?
I would say that I got really well mentored by my bosses. And I've always said, by the way, Simone, that if you want to have a really honest judgment of how you were doing, ask your ex-boss, especially if you're friendly with them, because often people find it really hard to give you totally honest feedback when you're working together. But I've had a lot of help. In fact, one of my bosses at Citibank promoted me on maternity leave. And it gave me such confidence about coming back to the bank after my 12 weeks off that I just felt fantastic walking through the doors and knowing that I was actually, the next level up with a new baby. I mean, how amazing. And then I've had people that sponsor me. I mean, I sponsor quite a lot of people in business because this is about the ability that you're senior in your organization. Somebody rings you up and says, I'd love to move from where I am today. It might be, say, somewhere in Asia, and I'd love to move to North America. How do I do this, Anne? And can you help me? And the answer is, yeah, of course I can help them. And so I think those two things in combo are two very different things, but necessary things to climb the corporate ladder.
I think there is something about, sometimes it's that feeling as though you can ask for help. Sometimes when we do a lot of mentoring, different forms of mentoring, and sometimes it's that it's convincing people to be part of the conversation. That, oh no, not me, no, oh no, let someone else could have that. And I think it's really important that we all to have multiple mentors, multiple conversations. And I'm always overwhelmed by the amount of mentors that we get coming forward, because everyone I come across wants to use their power for good, and that's clearly you.
It's nice of you to say so. I mean, the 30% Club has a fantastic mentorship scheme. I think there's something like 2,500 people involved in it in Britain this year, and it's cross-company. So, senior people, men and women in one company, are mentoring women who could step up to sort of senior management and board level from another company. And of course, the whole thing with this is networks, isn't it? It's building your network, not just inside your company, but across companies. I think that's really vital. Through this scheme, I actually mentor people around the world. And actually, one of my mentees has just become a partner in one of the big four companies. And she lives in Atlanta. She's a Black American. And it's been great for me. I mean, I didn't get her there, but I talked to her about her interview process and all the things that were going on. And we also talked about our families and so on, because it's been an interesting time with COVID, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's the power of that mentoring is about, I always think it's about being the best version of you. It's about you, and it's enabling yourself to go, actually, this is about me. And it can feel awkward, but I think that's the power of mentoring. And finally, Anne, what does being on our Northern Power Women Power List 2022 mean to you? We're delighted to have you on board.
Well, first of all, I love that it's the Northern Power List. As I said, I very much identify with being Northern. And I do think that the whole conversation today about levelling up is a really important one, and one that I hope will happen in a real way across the country. I know it's very much discussed in my government position in Bays. And I'm just delighted, Simone, that I'm recognised on this list with all of these other tremendous women that you've got on there. And I have joined one or two of your sessions and just loved the whole conversation. And as I said before we came on the air, I think you're a media genius with your 27 million hits and so on. But really important that people are seen to get recognition and seen to identify with their roots and be able to share their success with each other and the wider community. That's lovely.
And the thing I love is once you're a Northern Power Woman, you're always a Northern Power Woman. So you could go and live in, the other side of the world. You could change your careers, you could change sectors, but for us, you will always be Northern Power Women. So, Anne, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom, your passion. You're a clear force of nature who's using their force for good and their power for good. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Simone. It's been wonderful.
And thanks to you for tuning in today. If you love our episodes, let us know by rating, reviewing and subscribing to the podcast. Let your friends know about us. Reach out to us on socials at North Power Women on Twitter and Northern Power Women on all our other social media. I'm always proud of the fact that we can try and enable conversations with exceptional role models, and today is 100% up there with Anne. So please join us next Monday. We'll be joined by another amazing human from our Northern Power Women community. My name is Simone Roche. You've been listening to the Northern Power Women podcast, a What Goes On Media production.